Oh, hi. Sorry, I love candy. In fact, I love candy so much, I'm convinced that it actually makes me smarter. I know what you're probably thinking. Cuckoo. Well, maybe or maybe not. In a series of experiments performed at Princeton University in 1987, participants were asked to perform one of the following activities prior to being tested on challenges of creative ingenuity: 2 minutes of exercise, receiving a small bag of candy, or viewing 5 minutes of one of the following videos: a comedy gag reel, a documentary about Nazi concentration camps, or a math film called Area Under the Curve. The intent of the experiments was to determine if the pretest activities would affect how people solve creative problems. Here's what they found. Those that received the candy or watched the comedy reels saw improved performance. All other conditions saw no performance improvement at all. So what could possibly explain these results? There's no way that candy is better for you than exercise. Was it the sugar rush from the candy? Likely not. In the same study, the comedy movie had a similar effect on these creative tasks with 0 sugar and 0 calories. Could it be that the comedy and candy conditions induced some sort of elevated state of arousal? Again, likely not. The exercise condition, generally considered to increase arousal, saw no performance improvement at all. So what then? It turns out that it's not really about the sweetness of the candy or the content of the funny movie. The researchers concluded that it's about the positive feelings that these experiences induced in their participants. These feelings are called positive affect, also known as joy, good feelings, or simply being in a good mood. According to cognitive scientist Daniel Kahneman, it's because positive affect, or good feelings, create a state of cognitive ease, which allow our thoughts to flow more freely. In fact, we might consider this priming of positive feelings to be a lubricant of sort for memory, increasing the flow of ideas and creativity. Negative affect involves experiencing the world in a more negative way, a bad mood, if you will. These negative emotions can create feelings of cognitive strain, actually slowing down the flow of ideas and creativity. So, how we feel can profoundly affect how we use our brain and the decisions we make. In the Princeton study, we saw how the most subtle influences caused very different results in solving creative problems. Better feelings cause better results. Here's another example. In a 1997 European study, they tested the priming effects of music in a retail environment. The intent of the study was to determine if the music playing in the background would affect the decision-making of which type of wine to purchase. There were 2 types of music, French accordion and German Bierkeller, and 2 types of wine, as you might expect, French and German. The wines were similar in cost, dryness, and quality, and were displayed equally prominently in the supermarket drink area over a 2-week period. Over that same period, French and German music played intermittently. Here's what they found. When the French music played, 77% of the bottles of wine sold in the area were French wine. But when the German music played, you guessed it, 73% of the wine sold was German. What's really interesting, when respondents were asked whether they thought the music influenced their choice of wine, most felt that there was little or no effect. So this is a great example of how elements in our environment can subtly and imperceptibly influence our actions. Many of these external influences are beyond our control, but research shows that by creating positive affect, we can gain more control of our actions and outcomes. In a 2005 University of California Riverside study, researchers demonstrated that frequent positive affect or happiness is associated with and precedes successful outcomes. And there's more. A study that we just published as part of my research sought to determine if priming positive affect could reduce student anxiety and improved cognitive test performance. There were 56 participants, mostly university students. The results were compelling, with a clear reduction in anxiety and an increase in cognitive test performance by almost 25%. Okay, now I know what you're thinking. How do I get me some of that positive affect? Well, as it turns out, there are many ways to generate those positive feelings. Humor, or a gesture that makes someone laugh or feel special. Subtle experiences that create joy, like receiving candy. Love or social connections can generate those positive feelings. Or simply smiling. Dubbed the ideomotor effect, a 1988 study determined that stimulating a smile by placing a pencil sideways in the mouth made Far Side cartoons funnier than when pointing the pencil outwards from the mouth. Exposure to positive environments, nature, awe-inspiring landscapes, greeting the morning sunrise, or saying hello to a beautiful sky. Hi, sky. What about technology? So central to our lives, but often blamed for making us sad and antisocial, and in some cases justifiably so. Yet there's clear evidence that properly designed technology can be a powerful tool in generating those feelings that make us better. Here are a few examples. Playing video games can generate such positive feelings that many gamers report achieving flow experiences. That's an elevated feeling of immersion where you lose total sense of time. In a 2018 study, Zombies vs. Anxiety, video games were shown to reduce anxiety and create those feelings of flow. Virtual reality, or VR, can be a powerful tool for creating these feelings. In fact, our positive affect study used VR video games to reduce anxiety and increase performance. Here's a sample clip. But the potential for VR goes far beyond video games. The latest technology can create environments and characters that are so compelling that they are hard to distinguish from reality. VR can create feelings of presence and authenticity that allow our minds to believe they are present in the virtual space. For those of you old enough to remember, think about the Star Trek holodeck. So why is this important? Well, remember the wine study where the background music so dramatically affected sales, an effect that most were oblivious to? Well, research shows that we rarely notice what is not within our core focus. In a famous 1999 study by Simons and Chabris called Gorillas in Our Midst, participants watched a video and were asked to count how many times the basketball was passed. Unbeknownst to the viewers, a man in a gorilla suit conspicuously walked across the frame during the process. Most viewers failed to notice. So in both the wine and gorilla studies, changes in the environment happened while the focus was elsewhere. In the gorilla study, viewers were focused on counting basketballs. In the wine study, buyers were focused on shopping. These techniques can influence what you buy, or even deceive you. This is how magic works. Magicians use sleight of hand techniques to direct your attention away from the deception. I used to use sleight of mind techniques dating as a teenager. Make a few funny jokes and maybe she won't notice that horrible zit on your nose. It didn't work. Now let's relate this to virtual reality. Because VR can simulate the most lifelike scenarios, it becomes an excellent tool for these sleight of mind techniques. VR can be programmed to look precisely the way you might expect, but with the ability to direct your attention and make subtle changes to almost anything in the environment, including people. And as in the wine and gorilla studies, most people will not notice. So let's say I want to make you more creative. I can design a virtual environment to allow you to feel more creative. You likely will not even know that you're becoming more creative. I can adjust the backgrounds, the lighting, the sound, or even the people you encounter. What if I want to make you smarter? Well, I can deviously ask you to inhabit the Albert Einstein avatar. A recent study from the University of Barcelona demonstrated that participants embodied in the Einstein avatar improved cognitive task performance. Or use these strategies to create positive feelings between different races or cultures. A related study, in fact, by the same group from Barcelona, found that the VR embodiment process of white people in black avatars led to sustained reduction in their implicit racial bias. So we've seen the simplest ideas can generate positive affect, and VR and video games can help us go even further. But here's an interesting way to increase positive affect: mere exposure and repetition of non-negative experiences. In 1968, psychologist Robert Zajonc created several studies that demonstrated that mere repeated exposure of concepts or words led to more positive feelings and associations with those concepts. Just think of the songs we hear. The more we hear them, the more we like them. Brands, the more they are exposed, the more we like them and believe them. So let's connect the dots. Positive affect can make us less anxious and smarter. These feelings can be primed by very simple things like comedy, nature, or receiving candy. Technology like VR can allow us to create influential scenarios to prime those feelings without us even knowing. Repeating non-negative experiences can help us like and believe concepts, ideas, or even people. So whether we use the technology or just simple ideas, we can help people become less anxious and smarter with a very simple formula. Create a positive experience and repeat. It's that simple. My light bulb moment, the simplicity of the idea. So in my research, I think of candy as a metaphor for anything that generates positive affect. The candy could be a VR video game, a funny movie, or more literally, the feeling you get when you walk into a candy store. Then we add the concept of repetition. So what is the candy code? Candy plus repetition equals good feelings, equals more cognitive capacity, equals less anxiety. Now, before we conclude, let me be clear. I'm not advocating for legions of blissfully deluded youth fueled by Mars bars and gummy bears solving the world's problems. Absolutely not. There are many types of candy that can work just as well. Seriously though, as in all research, context is critical. The concept of positive affect is an ephemeral tool where the effect may last a minute or a day, but in that short period of time, it may change the trajectory of your experience and your life. So now back to my original audacious assertion. Does candy actually make you smarter? Well, I'll throw it back to you. Does the thought of having candy make you smile? If so, then heck yeah. In closing, I'd like to share a quote from one of William Shakespeare's lesser known yet epic tales, A Midsummer Day's Indulgence. Act 2, Scene 3, as Sir John of Eisen carefully examines the candy, then passionately devours it, he said, and I quote, candy, it maketh me smarter. So it wasn't Shakespeare, it was me. But I made you smile. Thank you.